The questions people are asking when they call in are completely different than ever before, right? They're much more educated now.
Yeah.
And it's like to the point where they're actually stumping some of their intake folks.
They're running at about 30% capacity. But it also kind of aligns with what we hear a lot from law firms, which is, I feel like I'm busier, but I'm not making more money. You can't have a podcast about law firm marketing without talking about Morgan & Morgan. Their goal in their advertising campaigns is not to sell you legal services, it's to On today's episode, why clients are asking ChatGPT for legal advice before they ever call your firm, how AI should influence firms to rethink their pricing model, and how Morgan & Morgan has rewritten the playbook for legal marketing and advertising. All right, we're back for episode 2.
Here we are.
Code game looks strong again.
Yeah, you too. As always.
Again, I think we should. This episode again is unofficially sponsored by J. David's. J. David's in Valencia, California. If you're in Southern California and you're looking for great menswear, highly suggest you go visit J. David.
He's amazing.
He is amazing. All right, so we're going to kick this off with a similar, well, at least a topic along the same way that we kicked off episode 1. We're going to talk about AI. But specifically, there was an article in Axios, again, that we'll post in the show notes, about how consumers are using ChatGPT before they reach out to a law firm about help or consultation. So
Change the game.
yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. Again, I think one of the things that you hear a lot about around AI is actually, for whatever reason, in the legal category, and how much knowledge these LLMs or large language models have around, basic questions that you may want to answer from like a legal perspective. But this really, really does impact a lot of ways that attorneys need to be thinking about adjusting their firm practices. So I think the first one is intake. So you work with a lot of attorneys here. Tell me what you're hearing, what you're seeing on how use of platforms like ChatGPT are forcing attorneys to kind of think about intake differently.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking with an attorney the other day, and CMO, longtime client of ours, really great firm. And she's like, the questions people are asking when they call in are completely different than ever before, right? They're much more educated now.
Yeah.
And it's like to the point where they're actually stumping some of their intake folks, right? Because they weren't, they're not attorneys that screen the initial calls and things like that. And she's like, so we've now had to kick off a training with our attorneys so that they're more educated so they can answer these questions. Because like you go to ChatGPT and people used to just look for a lawyer, go to their website, right? That was the old marketing play forever, was we would load up the site with content about, laws and rules and regulations, and that's how you would educate them. ChatGPT now does all that, right? So then ChatGPT will surface questions you should ask your lawyer.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
yeah.
What's their billable rate? Like, do they handle X, Y, and Z? In the family law world, you should ask about alternative dispute resolution, right? I mean, and so they're much more educated now when they call in. And so it's a different experience. It's not just like, oh, well, these are the potential penalties if it's a criminal offense. They already know that, right? ChatGPT's already told them. So now they want to know, how are you going to get me the minimum, possible sentence or whatever, versus like what kind of, how much trouble am I in?
No, for sure. Yeah, I think the other thing that your sophisticated users of AI are doing is not just asking ChatGPT like a high-level question, but you can ask it to explain a concept to you like you're a kid.
Yeah.
Right? So even if you're not capable of kind of interpreting legal type language you would often find on a law firm's website, you can ask these AI tools to actually kind of dumb it down for you.
I do it with my daughter's homework. She's in algebra in 7th grade, and I've totally forgotten most of the formulas. And I'm like, explain it to me like I'm in 7th grade. And it's like, boom, boom. I'm like, it's great.
Yeah.
But it's a similar concept with law, right? Like they don't have any idea what they're looking at or going into. And they can, ask it, and it will, like you said, give it right back to them.
So you mentioned that we have a firm that we work with, and the lead attorney, she was talking with you about training for their intake team. So, we think about ways to use these tools internally here at Scorpion from a training perspective too. And I think one of the things that would be wise for attorneys to do is go to ChatGPT, go to Claude, go to Grok, go to different language models and ask those models, what are common questions that people ask you about law firm issues, or I'm sorry, family law issues or divorce cases or DUIs or car accidents. Get those list of questions and then use those platforms to help you build training content around that. Are you seeing any firms doing those things? Hopefully, if you're watching this, you do those things now,
you
right?
should be.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a few, the more, the smarter, more kind of with it firms are starting to do that, right? Because they're Googling, and asking the models themselves, and they're like, oh my gosh, if that's what's coming back, I need to go train my other people, right?
Yeah.
But not nearly enough, I don't think,
Yeah.
and they have to understand things are different, Your potential client is going to act differently when they call you than they ever have before in the history of your 20-year firm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to change as these models get smarter,
Yeah.
as
right.
they know more about you, right? Like the follow-up questions and that type of stuff, and especially like something around, again, like family law, where there's a lot at stake, right? It's not, oh, I got charged with a DUI. It's pretty cut and, dry as far as what the penalties are. And you call it, in a family law issue, like you've got potentially kids, you've got a house, you've got a 401k, you might have some debt. Like there's a lot that goes into that.
Sure.
There's a lot of research, right? And so they're going to spend a lot of time educating themselves on all these different matters. And so your approach is not just education of the client. You're going to have to actually sell why you versus someone else, right? Because now all this information is just out there for anybody and everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Another interesting thing that this article mentioned is pricing. More specifically in the law firm world, billable hours. And so one of the questions that the consumers are going to ChatGPT is, how much does it typically cost for a case like this? By the way, we talked about this in episode 1. This is something that we see in other parts of our customer base too, particularly with home service businesses. People asking like, what's it cost on average for me to get my HVAC?
I do it all the time for
Absolutely.
everything before I call anybody. I go and it gives me estimates, and I realize that it's going to be different,
Sure.
probably not right, but at least it gives me a range, right? Like I need gutters. And so I'm like, I have no idea how much gutters cost. And so now I have a good sense of what it's going to be before I even call in,
Yeah.
right?
So a lot of years ago, most home service companies charge by the hour, and they shifted more towards a flat fee job-based model. Are you seeing that this advent of AI and having this information at the consumer's disposal, is that going to shift more attorneys in thinking about how they bill differently?
I think it will definitely change their approach in how they support cases, because if you do bill by the billable hour, there is a lot of work that doesn't need to be done by a human anymore.
Yeah.
An AI
Drafting of
program.
documents and
That's
things of that
exactly
nature.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely going to shift, and that's going to have ramifications as far as like the number of cases they can, handle at any given time, how many staff they need to support those types of cases. I definitely think it's going to make a big difference there.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that a little bit deeper in a little bit of a later episode.
Totally. You're now on the positive side of this, right? Because a lot of times, I think human nature, people think, oh, I'm at this new disadvantage now because, information that I used to be the expert on, that I provided to our client, now they have access to that information through these AI tools.
Yeah, like their secrets are exposed or
Exactly,
something.
Exactly. But I would argue that on the flip side, if you have someone that comes to you having done research, they are in the serious buying mode. Like they need help. They need an attorney. They recognize that. They're just trying, honestly, in most cases, they're probably just trying to be able to understand what's ahead for them. So I think on the flip side here, like if you're an attorney, I would see this as opportunistic. Think about this from like a training perspective for your intake team, and then think about these opportunities as warmer, better leads. You have a different opinion, or do you?
No, I mean, I think there's going to be some bad to it as well. I mean, like think about, like I can't imagine how awful it's been for doctors over the past few years, because I call it like Dr. Google, right?
Yeah.
Like you have a symptom, immediately go to Google and
Sure.
you start, and then you call your doctor. Oh my God, I've got blah, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you don't. Like I understand Google told you this, probably blah blah blah, but come on in, let's do it.
Yeah.
and let me put my experience to work and
Sure.
figure out what it is, right? It's going to be a very similar thing,
Yeah.
I mean, people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to file this resolution under this penal code, and there's a Supreme Court ruling from 1834 that proves my, so there's going to be some rough clients, right?
Sure.
But you've already had rough leads and rough clients forever and ever and ever. But I do think in general, your better clients are going to be more educated, right? And I think that will actually be helpful because they are going to know a little bit about what's going to happen before they even call you. So it's not like sticker shock,
Yeah.
So I think there's two sides to it. There's
Yeah.
experts, and I read this thing from ChatGPT and I know better than my lawyer. It's going to create that. But I think your good click cases are going to be a little bit better.
Yeah, agreed. One other kind of opportunity here that I see, we talked in episode 1 about search everywhere optimization, right? And making sure that you are showing up in these new AI platforms and not just thinking about your firm through the lens of page 1 on Google. Doesn't this opportunity kind of represent a new way for firms to be thinking about content?
Absolutely.
Right. So one of the things that I think law firms should consider is writing more informational content on their websites about pricing, about everything that goes into a particular case type, right? So that when someone in their area, say you're a family law firm in Orlando, someone in your area is asking the question, how much does a divorce cost in Orlando, Florida? If you are an authority on that point of view through your website content, well then
you're going to show up there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, the information is now there for everybody, right? So just having it on your website is not going to separate you from the other 5,000 law firms that are going after the exact same cases, right? So what's going to set you apart is showing your expertise and authority and knowledge in that area, right? So it's that spin on, in my years, I've seen X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah,
or here's what this
to
means
this.
for you,
Yeah, absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
Like that's what's got to change going forward.
Yeah.
Because again, just spitting out, regurgitating facts.
No, of course.
That's
that
everywhere.
never works though.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it never really
That's
has.
a tried and true thing around SEO, right? You can't just like throw up a rando article that's super generic.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to layer in your expertise, your experience, real world examples or analogies of
case results.
Absolutely.
Right. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, like the AI overviews, they do look at your case results.
Sure.
We've always pushed that really hard because again, I strongly believe that is something that sets you apart from your competitors.
Absolutely.
Right. Because it's real results.
Yeah,
I've been there and done that. But like it now looks at that as well too. And we'll talk about that. The firm lists number of remarkable case results on their site, right? Like that is again real marketing. It shows up at the very tip top of the page and it's going to make them want to call you versus someone just bland like blah blah blah, this is what the law is. Like no one cares. At the end of the day, what they really want is someone to help them and get them out of their situation, get them through to the other side and a successful outcome. And so like let's talk about that.
Look, I mean, this is again of no surprise to me that consumers are using these tools to arm themselves with more information before getting in touch with a law firm. And look, to me, this is kind of a precursor to a future where maybe we've got our own, as consumers, we've got our own agents that do these things on our behalf.
Oh, I absolutely believe that's
right. So you have to think about, again, we go back, if you haven't checked out episode 1, please go back and check out episode 1. We talk a lot about, we're in this world today where you have to think about marketing your firm to humans and to the robots.
It's very true.
Right. So this is like a very new thing. We're going to obviously watch it, going to talk about it a lot. But I think step 1 today, if I'm a law firm, I am certainly thinking about training my staff on this new educated consumer, potential client. I would use AI as a mechanism to build that training out. And I would start with, what are the most common questions that people ask you about family law practices or criminal defense practices, et cetera. And then also think about how this plays into your content strategy from an SEO perspective.
Yep.
So you're an authority. Okay, great. We're going to move on to the next story.
Love it.
If you're liking this episode, we'd love for you to drop a quick rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It takes about 2 seconds to leave a rating, and it helps us get this show in front of more growth-focused legal operators like you. All right, let's get back to the show. All right, so this next story is actually a continuation of something that we just kind of talked about, and it is thinking about billing differently. in this new age of AI, right? So again, most law firms bill on an hourly rate. Is it increments of 6 minutes in many cases? That would drive me nuts, by the way, like just thinking about how to operate my day, like having to every 6 minutes, like figure out like, what am I doing?
I mean, people most clients don't realize every time you email your attorney, if they're billing by billable hours, that's going to be 6 minutes to get that reply of
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And it's 1/10 of that retainer fee. If it's 350, that's $35 to get that okay back.
Well, this article in leanlaw.co, again, we'll post the article. This talked about, just a stat that I'm going to read, the average law firm attorney bills just 2.9 hours out of an 8-hour day and then collects about 91 cents of every dollar. So if you run that math, they're running at about 30% capacity.
That's awful.
It's awful, but it also kind of aligns with what we hear a lot from law firms, which is, I feel like I'm busier, but I'm not making more money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So again, we touched on this in the last or a couple minutes ago when we talked about this move from billable hours to flat fee in home services. What is the opportunity for a law firm to think about doing this a little bit differently and doing something similar?
So, I mean, I was talking to a longtime client of ours, a great friend of mine at this point. And I don't want to spoil all of his secrets, but we were literally talking about this particular subject, right? He's in a traditionally all billable hours, area of law. And he's toying with the idea of moving to flat fees because, he sees the writing on the wall, right? And I will say that one of the things we were talking about is insurance companies are, because defense attorneys have historically always billed by the billable hour.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sure.
So the PI lawyers are going up against. But the insurance companies, they're always looking to save $1, right? And one of their big things is they're pushing them away from, doing billing every single little hour because they know that AI can handle a lot of the stuff that they used to bill billable hours for, right? Like we talked about earlier, I mean, there's now programs that can do a lot of the legwork that you used to have human people do that were, billing those hours, right? And so I think it's going to change the game for sure on that. I think... if any model that is, strictly billable hours, the overall case price, if you will, is going to come down significantly because you're going to use technology to handle a lot of the things that you billed by hour for before. And so I think you're going to have to look at how do you, staff your law firm? How many people do you have supporting each attorney, from paralegals, legal assistants, those types of things? Because, unfortunately, a lot of that work will be handled by AI going forward. And, potentially it means you're going to need to have a lot more cases in order to make the same amount of revenue from that law firm, right? It's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And, there's a lot of dinosaurs. I don't know that they're all going to move to a flat fee.
Well, they won't. They won't. But again, I mean, like most industries, again, like nothing is immune from history.
Oh, yeah, that's
right. Like most industries, the people that choose to kind of be the laggers are not going to reap the benefits of your fast movers, right? So your early adopters.
Because they're going to talk to 3 to 5 attorneys no matter what.
Yeah.
Right. And if 4 are saying I'll do it for a flat fee of X, and then you're saying no, I'm going to bill. But I mean, people want that certainty of flat fee. I mean, that's another nice thing about flat
100%.
fees. Right?
Well, then you just kind of touched on, and this article called it out. There's been some research that shows people that are offering these flat fee opportunities, they're closing leads at like almost 3x faster than your hourly billing. And now think about this from an efficiency perspective and a lead to close and increasing that percentage, right? If you can close more leads that you're getting, that means more cases, that means more revenue for your law firm. If I'm calling a firm and I ask a question about, hey, I've got this issue. Let's say I'm not even married, but let's just say that I was married and I've got a divorce, and someone could say, hey, look, if it's an uncontested divorce, our fee is this and it includes this. That would be pretty versus, well, it's going to be X dollars an hour.
Between 10 and 50.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like, wow. Okay. I agree. I think it's great for the consumer, the potential new clients. I think it's great. I mean, criminal, defense firms have been doing this for a long
Of course.
time now,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
X
and
dollars for a DUI, your first
yeah,
offense. Yeah.
and not all of them are going to require the exact same amount of effort to resolve the case, but that's just part of the business, and they've all moved to that. So they just, understand that they might have 20 hours in one case and 10 hours in the next case, but it all kind of washes out in the end.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So I absolutely think more people are going to have to do that, because I think that's, a lot of service-based businesses, that's the way it works. I mean, imagine if you're going to get a new house built, right?
Yeah.
And someone came in and said it's going to be 500,000 or a million, whatever it is, and the next, contractor was like, "Oh, I bill on the billable hour," and it's like, so you're telling me this could be like 3 million by the time you're done? Like, no, thank you, I can't afford that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other important call out here is that firms don't have to go all in on one billing structure versus another. Like, you don't have to transition from hourly billing across everything you do as a practice to flat fee for everything. Right? Start with something that's simple. It could just be one area or one type of case.
Yeah. Or up to a certain, one of the things I've heard is up to a certain point within the litigation cycle.
Absolutely.
Right. And you could say up to here, kind of like you were saying earlier, the flat fee piece, right? It's like you can go up to here. I guarantee it's going to be blah. Right. Yeah. And then it's going to be up to you whether to accept that result or take it to trial, for example. And when you go to trial, that's a whole different thing, right? Because it could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
So I do think that what you're saying is like a hybrid model will probably be, right?
Yes.
But one thing is for certain is that AI is definitely going to change the overall cost of a lot of different cases because of the efficiencies that we'll be able to see in doing the work.
No doubt. And look, again, it'll be different because I recognize that while in my opinion, the consumer state of someone needing an HVAC or a plumber is similar to needing an attorney, like you're in a heightened state of anxiety. You don't really think about those types of businesses until you need them. I do recognize that there are many more regulations around legal practices versus home services. However, one of the things that's interesting about home services as it relates to advertising online, particularly with Google local service ads or LSAs, is there are now these opportunities where you can have Google AI get you pricing information through the LSA, right? So you can actually go tell Google, if you're looking for a criminal defense attorney, or if you're looking for an HVAC, you can basically click and say, hey, get me competitive pricing. Tell Google a little bit more specifically about the service that you need, and they will actually use AI to go out and ask for pricing, and they will text message you back. Here's what I got. So it's not completely unheard of that this could be coming to legal as well.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I mean, it's, local service ads are an interesting one because it was originally home services ads.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, just in home services.
And then they expanded it to one of the biggest spending markets, which is legal. And so some of it doesn't completely translate, but that doesn't really sometimes stop them from trying that. And again, to your point, the consumer's going to want that, hey, I got a DUI, I'm in Kansas City, right? Like, that could work to get pricing. Come back. And that's going to be an interesting thing because, most of our firms aren't the cheapest. Like, you don't want to be the cheapest in town.
That's right.
And unfortunately, that means you can't then like sell them on why you're the best, right? But that means your story on the website, your brand, out there in the market has to be strong.
Yes.
Your reviews have to be strong, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they're going to be seeing. I mean, LSA is the only thing you can tell other than the picture is quantity and quality of reviews. Every other profile is the exact same.
That's very true. Very true.
So it'll be interesting.
Look, again, the takeaway from these first two stories and topics today is just how these tools are empowering the consumer more and more. And I think it's in a law firm's best interest to pay attention to these things, to adapt to these things, not get stuck in your ways, and certainly look for opportunities to kind of pilot things like flat rate billing in a couple of areas. So more to come here.
Yeah. And if your margins are going to get squeezed by some of this, like you need to find efficiencies in your law firm, in your business to be able to continue to make money.
How can you use AI to find those efficiencies in your firm? Great call out. Great call out. Okay, let's go to our final story for the day. This is a fun one.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by Scorpion. Today, your potential clients search everywhere, not just Google. Scorpion helps your firm show up across search engines, AI tools, and platforms where people are actually looking, so you stand out when it matters most. Visit scorpion.co to learn more.
All right, you can't have a podcast about law firm marketing without talking about Morgan & Morgan.
No, that's for sure.
These guys just continue to raise the stakes and change the game as it relates to marketing in their playbook. I mean, last year they did two pretty outrageous things. They sponsored the WWE. Interesting choice. I would not have thought of it, but it does kind of make sense when you think about their brand and you think about, John Morgan's personality. And then they also hire the CMO the former CMO of Geico's automotive marketing division. Everybody knows Geico, right? There's not anybody on this planet, at least in the US, that has not heard and seen a Geico commercial hundreds, if not thousands of times.
That's exactly right.
So look, Morgan & Morgan's been a behemoth in the marketing space in legal for a really, really long time, yet they continue to evolve. I think one of the things that I think about here is they're kind of created a masterclass in brand building. Right? Their goal in their commercials and their advertising campaigns is not to sell you legal services. It's to make their character and their brand aware of you in their mind. So if you have a need, you think, oh, I remember seeing Morgan & Morgan. So look, you've been working again with really, really big PI firms across the country. Not often do they have the same geographical presence, but they're really, really big in their respective markets, like their states or their metros. What have you seen over the years? Like, what should firms be taking away from Morgan & Morgan's playbook as it relates to marketing and advertising?
Well, I mean, I think it's the fact that they do have a playbook.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that is the thing. People, when they see Morgan or hear Morgan's coming into their territory, they get scared, whether they like it or not, because they know that it's not just that he's going to outspend everybody. That's not it. He's just not just throwing money down the drain and lighting money on fire, right? They have a very specific playbook that they follow in every single market they go into.
That's right.
And their brand is like no other. I mean, the tint on the TV commercials, like the color blue they use, the tagline for the people, the testimonials, right? Like now they're running the America's largest injury law firm, Size Matters. I'm in Florida now, so they are everywhere, right? Constantly. Yeah. That was their home base, Orlando, originally. But people know that when they come in, they're going to run their playbook, right? And they're going to take market share, and they know he's coming, right? So I think you have to build a brand. You got to figure out what is your unique selling points, right? Like what is different about you than them, because you're not going to compete with them on size. You're not going to compete with them on money spent. So you have to have a different angle, and what sets you apart, and why should they hire you versus calling Morgan, right? Like that's the important thing to understand and figure out, and then go to town with that.
Yeah, the other thing that's really interesting to me about, at least in the last couple of years, is not just their kind of traditional advertising and marketing approach, right? And again, I say traditional, it's, they're running TV commercials about their firm and their practice. They're doing these interesting sponsorships with like WWE. They're flooding new markets with different types of campaigns when they enter new markets. Those are all, you can kind of see the types of cases and the types of clientele they're trying to attract to those efforts. But on the flip side, in the last couple of years, you see a lot more PR that John Morgan is doing personally, right? You see him on the news talking about politics, right? You see him on podcasts talking about being a founder of a business, right? And what I think is interesting about that is that audience that pays attention to those things doesn't exactly align with the audience that he appears to be attracting through his kind of traditional marketing and advertising. So he's kind of got a different approach to attract very different clientele, and I think it's quite genius.
Yeah, I do too. Now he's got the whole family in there. He's got the Morgan boys. He's bringing them in.
True.
And so because he was the face forever. It was him. But I like what he's doing. He's getting out. He's now talking about how, there's a lot of podcasts where he's not spilling all the beans and secrets, but he's pretty open about how much he's spending, how many cases they're getting, and how he approaches marketing. And I think a lot of people have a lot to learn from that. I mean, he clearly has set the bar, as you said at the beginning of it, for legal marketing. I mean, taking it, no one else has done what he's done,
Right.
in the country, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's admirable, whether people like him or not. I think, he is the shining star of legal marketing.
Look, I think going back to Playbook, and like you said something, one of your first comments is that he has a playbook. And a lot of firms approach marketing from kind of a shotgun approach, right?
Yeah, shoot from the hip.
Yeah, they don't think about a playbook. And that's one of the things that we constantly try to coach our clients on is thinking about, hey, we've got a playbook. And again, our playbook differs depending on the size of firm you are and your goals and things of that nature. But we've got a lot of reps doing this. I think one of the things that I think is really, really interesting that firms should take away from Morgan's playbook is he almost always starts with brand and awareness.
First.
Yep. Right? And while I understand that building brand, it does require a certain level of investment, right? You can't just say, I want to build a brand, and then you think about, well, how much money am I going to put behind that? And the answer is $0.
Yeah, that just doesn't happen magically.
You can't do that, right? But if you had the means, or even if you don't have the means, you should be thinking about marketing from the perspective of, at what point in my firm's life cycle can I start to think about how I really lean into differentiating my brand and getting that message out, and not just thinking about lead generation and I need a case tomorrow. I get that those things are all important. It's all about the context of where you are in your firm's life cycle.
Well, one thing I would say about that is I think, it's human nature is that, we expect instant results, right? And
Yeah,
so
well,
I
we
think
want that.
We all do, right? We expect it, we want it, but you can't build a brand overnight, right? That just doesn't happen.
right.
And I think most firms end up giving up on it before they see the results, because they do it for 6 months. They run a billboard for 6 months and, it didn't work. And it's like, well, I can promise you Morgan & Morgan is not having millions of billboards around the country because it doesn't work.
That's right. That's right.
It does work. But he knows when he goes into a market, like you said, you've got to build the brand there first, right? And so he's willing to invest the long term in a new market to build that brand, to then back it up with the rest of the marketing as well too. And again, I think that's kind of the lesson there, is that like you can't just expect to build a brand overnight. It's not going to happen. You got to do it consistently for a long time.
That's right. And look, there's not everything about brand building is incredibly expensive.
No, video. Pull out your iPhone, right? Our iPhones are great video these days, right? And you can just start there. Maybe it's not as high quality as this production here, but it's something, right? And start there and work your way up.
Also, like reviews and reputation.
Yeah.
Right? Look, at the end of the day, like your brand is reflective of the value that you deliver to your clients.
Yep.
Right? So if you're delivering great value and your clients are willing to talk about that, like there's probably no better branding for your firm than that. Now, you've got to deliver the value. You can't just say, I want to build a brand and then just hope your clients leave you raving reviews. You've got to deliver on that value. But yeah, like to your point, like shooting video content, even getting if all you can afford is, a decent camera, or even your iPhone camera, which are great today, by the way, in a decent setting, and you can talk about things that separate you and that demonstrate your expertise, that's certainly low cost. Building your reviews and reputation, that's another low cost asset. And then again, I think you just have to think in terms of playbook and life cycle of where you are as a law firm, and think about at what point in that life cycle can you really start to spend more money building your brand out? Because again, I go back to going back to the Morgan & Morgan tie-in, right? They enter in a new market, or maybe they are in your market already. You're not going to spend toe-to-toe with them and win. That's just not a strategy that most firms, maybe the top 1% in a market can, but that's just large in part not a strategy that most firms can really lean into. They're going to have to think about, how do I outflank,
that's right,
and do things differently that are advantageous to me as a firm, that will help me differentiate from the Morgan & Morgan in my market. And there are ways absolutely to do that.
Well, and you also look at like, you don't have to build a nationwide brand to start with, right? Like start in your local community.
Yes.
Right? And become the brand in your small little local community, right? Like not all of LA, maybe this little section of Santa Clarita, right?
Sure.
Maybe sponsor a little league team, right? That's like, you buy them some uniforms and put it on the back, right? That's one step to building a brand.
I think the idea here is that, we want law firms to have a playbook. And that playbook is going to, or it should evolve as your firm continues to evolve, as you grow, as you think about expansion. But you need a playbook, you need a framework.
And we're also not saying copy, right?
No, absolutely.
That's not the thing, because it doesn't work for everybody.
That's right.
Right?
That's
Like everybody doesn't have his personality, right? You're not going to have your unique selling, propositions are going to be different than his.
That's right.
you
That's
know?
right. Well, look, this has been another fun episode. Looking forward to the next one. Thanks again for joining us, and we're going to see you next time real soon.
All right, that's it for this one. Remember, leads are good, cases are better. Until next time.